So the main thing, the big thing that was communicated to me early on that I think was really important is this idea of having this sort of like homogenizing your whole stroke into being as similar, every movement that you make being as similar to each other as you can, so that as you start speeding stuff up, you're not having to think about this motion or this motion or this motion. It's all just this little motor that's running, right? And so one of the things that does that is this idea of landing your thumb on the fifth string, whether or not you're going to play it. So that so a lot of people, when they do a bum-ditty, right, just that very basic stroke, they might have their bum just with their thumb out here doing nothing, and then when they do the ditty, right, which is what you're supposed to do, or even sometimes having, like you said, having that thumb be a separate stroke, so they'll go more like, right, and what we want is, right, so that's almost the same motion twice, right? I'm doing that motion, and then I'm doing it again, but playing the fifth string. And part of the idea of that playing the fifth string, you want it to be what I think of as sort of a reciprocal motion to your downstroke hitting the string, is that it's not just playing the string. What's happening is that your hand, you can see it from the side, your hand is coming back up, it's starting to come back up, and your thumb is just coming to meet it as it comes back up, right? So you have this, right? And to me it almost feels like I start with my hand more closed than I end up with. You can see it's almost like it's the thumb catching on the fifth string that starts to separate the thumb from the hand, right? So I'm going, right, where it's not, right? There's some flex going on to how the thumb is interacting with the fifth string. And on top of that, I think it's really useful to think about when you do just this very first stroke, you want to, it almost feels like to me like a trampoline, or like, it reminds me of dancing a little bit. There's this weight play, right? So you're going down and you can feel the weight of your thumb and your hand on the fifth string. There's a little bit of flex there. Right. And if you can get into that rhythm, there's like a way, that's what you're turning into momentum, sort of, right? That's why I think of like the trampoline, right? Is that it's like a bounce up and down, right? And
so
you get to,
show me the exercise that I would do to lock that in.
Well, so I mean, it's just repetition of that bum-ditty, but it's all about internal recognition of these different aspects of that motion. So it's mostly just mileage about doing this exercise, but it's paying attention to these different aspects. Landing the thumb on the fifth string every time you play. So just try this with me a couple times. Just do that stroke. Yeah, and you can play over the neck. That's totally fine. Yeah, and again, maybe start up a little bit higher, not like super high, and go really slow, and think about your thumb being a little bit closer to your hand, and as you come down, that thumb is separating as you're, yeah, totally, that looks wonderful. The other thing you might start to think about here, and again, I see a lot of variation in how people approach it, but is where the motion comes from. This happens on other instruments too, mandolin and guitar, whether you're moving from your elbow or moving from your wrist. And generally, the answer is that it's more ergonomic to move from your wrist, right? Your wrist is more supple, sort of, right? And it's is able to sort of handle
go faster.
Yeah, exactly. Go faster, and yeah, exactly. It's a shorter, right? This is such a big circumference, right? And this is much smaller. This is much smaller. So there's this way that you can set up your hand. Bring your banjo forward a little bit more. Again, you can end up in some different positions here. But what I want to try out is this angle of the arm, almost like some people end up being basically parallel to the strings, right? And their hand, right? Where they're like this, right? Where this plane of my hand here is parallel to the plane of those strings. And the way that I play, and that I've seen some other people play, that I tend to like, is taking this pinky side of our hand and moving it up so that it's almost like a fist along the fretboard, and I'm playing on the outside edge of this first finger rather than right that tip of my finger I've rotated in. So now So that's the way that I play and that I've found to be comfortable. And again, there's some variation in there about how exactly you're shaping that. Yeah, I mean, again, I move around in some different positions. So sometimes I'm in this sort of folk style hold, which I know from guitar. They call this the folk hold and this the classical hold, right? And so, but those are really going to affect where. When I'm here, this is sort of stuffed in my armpit.
So it's almost like you're coming from 9 o'clock.
Exactly, yeah, exactly, from the side. And you'll see a lot of banjo players like that in the old time world for sure, that are very much tucked in here. And yeah, the whole like Kyle Creed, the round peak style banjo players are all fretless and stuff like that. They mostly play like this. And then they're the more like people that came from singing traditions or stuff like that, where they need to be more upright for their diaphragm, stuff like that. They're not going to be hunched, But again, it leads to different posture, different. Again, I know this is not the simple answer you were looking for in terms of what do I need to work on, what do I need to play. I don't. It is. I can give you the ways that I think about it and the ways that I treat it, but. It really is not a world of right and wrong answers, right? It's like it's a world of
the different. Point is, I have to pick a way.
You have to pick a way to do for the next while. I've re-examined all of this stuff multiple times over the years, so I would not say that the way that you are going to do it for the next couple months is the way that you have to do it for the rest of your playing time. So what the things that I would concentrate on over those next couple months, grounding the thumb on the 5th string, I would say is number one goal for how you're approaching your right hand. I would say just try and move from the wrist as much as you can.
That just seemed like a no-brainer.
Yeah, excellent. I'm glad. But again, those are like that grounding of the thumb and trying to move from the wrist. So one of the things that I started doing was just going through these different strings, doing bum-ditties. Right. So grounding my thumb each time. Let's say 2 bum-ditties on each string, starting from the 1st string, working our way inward. It gets harder and harder doing bum-ditties on this open 4th. Right, grounding that thumb. You can see how close together my thumb and 1st finger are versus here. You have this nice. They're on opposite sides of the banjo, so it doesn't need to.
So the definition of the bum-ditty, as I understood it, usually involved a brush.
No, well, again, people conceptualize this differently. So some people played with a lot of this sort of where you have your initial note, that's sort of your melody note, right, and then you have a brush and the 5th string, right. And that's what a bum-ditty is. So that's true in a certain school of banjo playing, but in a lot you have and partly different melody, like that cuts you off melodically a little bit more, right? Because then you only have one place where a melody note can go.
That whole thing fascinated me when I wondered where does the melody go?
So part of it is that I think it actually the banjo is this really interesting instrument, especially in the old time world, where you have guitar is the rhythm instrument, right? Sometimes there's a little bit of play there with the bass runs. You can kind of think of that as a little third voice, right? That isn't just chords. But then you have fiddle, solidly melody. Has obviously rhythmic components to it, all that bow stuff, super cool. But you have these sort of on opposite ends of the spectrum, this rhythm versus melody. If you had to divide it versus, are you a rhythm player? Are you a melody player, right? Guitar is rhythm, fiddle is melody. Banjo is this funny thing in between, right? Where we have rhythm is this huge component of how we're, but we also get to express some melody, and different styles lead you slightly in different directions, right? So there are melodic styles that are going to be much more closely related to the fiddle. Want to get more melody notes? They have all these like, I was just showing my last student this. You have Cripple Creek can be, but you can do. Right, so that's like, it's a very melodic phrase that isn't getting a lot of rhythm, right? But you have this nice little linear melodic phrase. And then there are banjo players that are almost don't play the melody at all. They're just playing rhythmic counterpoint to a fiddle line, right? And so that can lead you into different ways. So like a bum-ditty for some people, again, in that round peak tradition, they almost never did brushes. They were playing on fretless banjos too, so they couldn't, all those going to different chord. They almost wouldn't do like a full C chord because you'd had to intonate each of these notes on a fretless, right? So you would play your bum-ditty on a C chord would be, right, would just be that, or maybe, but it's you're on a single string plus the fifth string. Gotcha. As a bum-ditty. And again, you can, like if I were to play, you could play Cripple Creek, right? I could play Cripple Creek. Right, it's a strum in between each of those melodies, kind of outlining the melody note, right? But you can also play it, right, with kind of no strums and moving the melody around in different ways. I could be going, where I go, right? There are all these sort of different pull-offs and movements you can do to I know we're getting into left-hand stuff, but again, without even thinking about that, it's just that you can construct, all we have here is we can go down on 1, 2, 3, 4, right? We can go 1, 2, 3, 4. That's what we have with our downstroke. Right. We can leave some of those out, but we're not going to go 1 and a 2 and a 3, right? We're not doing that kind of rhythm. So all we have is 1, 2, 3, 4, and all the ands either as fifth strings or eventually we can get them as drop thumbs, sure. Right? But so we can create all of our different rhythms. Bum-ditty is just 1, 2, and 3, 4, and, right? But you can have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. You can have 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and. You can create all of the rhythms that are there for you. You can, if you wrote it out, you can add or subtract as many of those little things, get yourself these different rhythms, or you can have, right, a little syncopated rhythm doing 1, 2, and then skipping my 3. 1, 2, and 4 and. Right, you can create all these different rhythms by what downstroke you're including and what upstroke you're including.
Okay. So let's get the exercises down.
Yeah.
What should I be? And you started one where you were doing.
Yeah. So let's just do like a bum-ditty except on single string. So we're going to do the bum and the did is on the same string, and then the ditty and then the e is the fifth string, right? So yeah, let's do 2 on each, and then we would move inward and do the same thing. You'll see one of the things that you see on my as I play. Rather than picking like outward, right? I'm picking so that, see, my finger lands on that first string, right? And it creates this little, and you kind of get used to the amount of pressure you put on so that that next string will catch you and that you don't go through it. And it's not that you don't have to have any elbow. You can definitely have some elbow, but you want that sort of, it's almost like to me it almost feels like a dropping of the wrist, right? It's like rather than a strum or like this lateral motion, it's that. A little bit of a combination, but yeah, that looks great. Yeah, so the more that you can sort of build that that accuracy, right, this orientation to the strings, being able to kind of move your way in and out, and again, that's just repetition, and really.
You're hitting pretty much the same place on your finger.
Yeah, definitely.
Regardless of where you are, which string you're on.
Yeah, correct. It's pretty much. I mean, I think maybe. I have the most amount of leeway on my first string, right, that I can, I feel like if anything, I hit the first string a little bit closer to the tip of my finger, like a little bit closer to this versus this. And then as I make my way back, it's like you can see my hand start to curve up this way, right? So here is this, but when I get to here, it's that.
Right.
Right, so there's a little bit of like almost an arc, right, that is happening with that. But again, that starts to...
Wait, do me a favor. Just do the exercise as you would like to see me practice.
Yep. So sort of was going between using single strings and bum-ditties, but you could do and brush strokes in between. But you could do the same thing. So you could do single strings, right? 2 bum-ditties on each. But you could also do that brush stroke and go. You could also start to alternate these and break up where the bum-ditty is, right? So you could go, right? So have the bum on the first string and the ditty on the second string.
There's an infinite variety of...
Exactly, and these are all the things like these in combination with left-hand stuff that you will do are all the things that you're going to encounter in these fiddle tunes, right? Where you have like, it's not always going to be even bum ditties on these different notes, right? There are songs that come along where they can be expressed like that. Nice ones like Boil the Cabbage Down, Cripple Creek. I think that's one of the reasons these are such classics, is because they have these really internalizable melodies that are expressible very simply and on lots of different kinds of instruments.
Right. Tell me about position, because I see a lot of people playing up here, but you're playing basically at the end of the head.
Yeah, exactly. I spent some time playing over the head, playing over the neck, over the scoop, and I like actually the sort of the extra sound I get from the knocking, the rapping as they call it. My hand against the right as I. Right, there's this sound.
There's a percussion.
Exactly, that I like, and to me adds a level of support, like rhythmic support to the feel. You know, I feel more rhythmically solid when I'm there. And again, this has to do with like that divide that I told you about earlier about which direction a banjo player leans. Are you going to lean in a rhythmic way or a melodic way? I've solidly I like to mess around with melodic stuff here and there, but when I play, I like to be a rhythm instrument. That's what I want to be. That's what I want to add. I mean, I like adding those little bits of melody, but to me, the fun part of it is being a rhythmic force in the. It's funny. Clawhammer is one of those things that you have to practice slow to get the motion down, right? But it does exist naturally at a decent tempo, and it's part of the reason that rhythm developed the way it did. Is because of that sort of forward-leaning feel that it has. It has this, like, that fifth string happening where it does propels you. It's propulsive, right? It leads it into it. So, ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum, ba-da, right? It's got this forward-leaning rhythm. And so it does sort of, like I said, exist naturally at a decent tempo. I think I'm a big fan of sort of what I call, like, simultaneous bottom-up and top-down approach, sort of. So, you know, in the case of speed, I would say spend some time, you know, playing really slow, just really like almost meditatively zoning in on this motion that you're doing, right. Like, because the more precise you can get that motion, because that's what happens when you speed stuff up, right? You speed stuff up and it's not that it's too fast, exactly. It's that it's not. I remember I had a student who was a big did judo, and I remember him passing along. I love it so much. I tell it all the students all the time is slow is smooth, smooth is fast, which I love so much, right? Because the idea is like you play slow to build that precision and that fluidity, right? And then it's only that fluidity that lets you speed up and play quicker, right? So, but there's also this idea, you play slow, try and get your actions down, get your motions really dialed in, but then there's this sort of what you might think of as a top-down approach that's trying to conceptualize what it's like to move quicker, right? So you want to have these, it's like there's a feel and it's almost like accent, like to me, you can start just feeling the bums of a bum ditty, right? So you can just feel that, and then the ditty ends up just being a reaction to that bum, right? So all you almost don't hear anything else besides that bum, right? Bum, 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 and you can start to accent it or not, right? So you can go. But it's almost like a pulse, right? That you have this like, and that I feel like there's a certain element to playing fast where you have to have these little anchor bits, right? These one little note that you're keeping once you've taken care of those motions, that mechanical part. It's just about being able to figure out what parts to focus on as you play quicker, right? And to me, at least one way of doing it is that boom, 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 right? And playing with a metronome, obviously super helpful, right? Being able to, especially, I've been a big fan recently of trying to play with the metronome at its different settings, right? So playing it at a quarter note, at a half note, at a whole note, at an eighth note, and each of those feels really different. And you can play it at the quarter note on the 1 and 2, or on on the 1 and 3, or on the 2 and 4. Those feel really different. But the more that you sort of can rhythmically understand what you're trying to do, like that bum-ditty, against different kinds of rhythms, then you're more solid to be speeding that up, right? You kind of, it's like understanding something from all the different angles, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Now brushes. I'll do the same thing a little bit quicker. 1, 2, 3,